Things are true because they pass a test that they could otherwise fail. Things are true because they have the potential to be false. Or we can rely on things, and we can depend on things because they consistently show themselves as reliable. We can rely on gravity because it consistently shows itself where it could conceivably not. Because this is something we learn when we're babies, when we're dropping things to see if they will keep falling. So when we're still setting out to acquire our own ways of judging the truth of things, a lot of this happens in the formative years that we don't remember as adults. We don't remember all the experiments that we did to figure out what is this that we're in, what is this world and what are its rules. And so we did experiments to see if, for example, when I drop the spoon, will it fall this time? Yes, it will fall every time it falls. Okay, this is something I can rely on because I put it to a test. In my human apprehension of the world through my nervous system and all that, there was a possibility of failure, that it could fail this test. The spoon could have failed the test by floating, and then I would have made my model accordingly. And so there must needs be opposition in all things. There must needs be the possibility of failure or falsehood for truth to mean anything. In order for me to get on with life as an embodied being in a world of physical laws, I have to test, and I have to comprehend that everything has its opposite. And so in order for something to show itself as true to me, it has to be fallible. It has to have the possibility of showing itself false. Maybe it never does show itself false, just as when I was a baby, the spoon never failed to drop. So gravity never showed itself as false. It was fallible, but it has never failed. Therefore, I rely on it, I depend on it, I trust it as true. The experiments that people have been doing for 2,000 years or whatever could have shown results confirming that the Earth was a flat disk. Instead, they showed results consistent with and confirming the theory that the Earth is a sphere. Therefore, because this data was fallible data, but didn't fail, it meaningfully gives us a model of the shape of the Earth that we depend on. We rely upon it as factual. So if there's a book that purports to tell me something and asks me to trust in its propositions, there ought to be a way that I can do experiments on what this book is presenting to me. And I might take a long time to find out the ways to experiment, and I might take a while to figure out just exactly what the book is proposing to me. If I believe that if I'm reading a book and I believe that it's purporting to tell me how this spherical Earth was formed, and it quite blatantly disagrees with what people have established as reliable fact by that human weighing of evidence and seeing what succeeds and what fails because of fallibility and falsifiability being at the root of what I decide to trust in. So if I think that it purports to tell me how the spherical Earth was formed and it fails at that, then it would be right for me to judge that as a failure. If now I come to understand that this particular book or this particular story is not trying to tell me the facts of the formation of this spherical Earth that I know that I live on, then I can start to evaluate it against, according to what it does propose. Is it proposing to give me a sense of my destiny and my purpose as something, as a human being, as something not just a cog in the great wheel, not just an entry in the great balanced ledger of the circle of life, not just as something to take part in the cyclical recycling of matter, but it's trying to point me towards something. Then I can start to evaluate it according to that. And the truth that I will find in it will be meaningful because it is fallible, because it's possible that it could be wrong. And I have a way of weighing and sifting and judging the usefulness and the wrong and the right of all these things. And so when I win an understanding of truth from these books, it means something to me. It is precious to me. I appreciate it and I rely on it because of the tests that I have put it to. Tests that they could have failed because they have to be fallible. But they did not fail that test. They have continued to show results like a scientific experiment, like when Alma is saying an experiment on my word. These pragmatic ways that you put these complex propositions to the test over these long experiments, and you start to see these fruits. You build up a gradual conviction of a truth that is meaningful and that you rely on and that you depend on, precisely because it passed a test that it could have failed. That is why for Scripture to be meaningful and true in a sense that is actually alive and quickening and useful to a human being in full engagement with this life, it has to be fallible. Because otherwise, what it is, it's a substitute sort of concept, maybe like a Western European concept, groping from a different angle at the same Eastern concept of some kind of nirvana or pleroma or primal melting into a oneness where you can finally stop thinking and stop being and stop taking part in the living in life with its root, with its fundamental essence of experimenting and judging and navigating between opposites. It means trying to holding a belief in scriptural inerrance, not inerrancy, but infallibility, is an attempt to return to an Edenic state. It's a rebellion against sort of the comprehension that everything has its opposite. There's one thing that has no opposite. Now, if there were indeed one thing that had no opposite, and if there were some kind of primal pleroma that we were trying to melt back into so that we could finally not only have a rest from our labors, but a rest from our individuality and our agency as getting into this situation and making our experiments and making our way by observing and experimenting and choosing. If there really were a place like that to which we could or should seek to escape or melt into, I don't believe that. I don't hold that. I have rejected that. But if there were, where would you put that as sort of a guiding star? Would you put that at the point of Polaris, far beyond the Earth, somewhere, a point, like a geometric point, indefinable, but something to orient yourself to? Or would you rather rely on something like magnetic north, which kind of approximates true north depending on where you are on the map, but wanders around and is not as reliable. And would you get all fundamentalist about magnetic north, saying that because the compass needle points in a direction that if you walk that way, yeah, you'd be going north because you're in this certain part of the world, that means magnetic north is infallible? Infallibly north? It's sad to see people give up their agency to such cogito interruptus, as Umberto Eco called it, or this way that you can turn your mind off. A certain point at which you just stop thinking.